Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives. This is Jess. And, you know, the words gay icon get thrown around very liberally these days. But in the galaxy of quote-unquote gay icons, I challenge you to find someone as uniquely talented and genuinely compelling as Gina Gershon, a 90s icon with Bound and Showgirls, the 2000s on Broadway and Cabaret, to appearances on Curb Your Enthusiasm, playing Donatella Versace, and of course, your impressions of Sarah Palin, Melania Trump. Guys, please welcome to the stage Gina Gershon.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay, Jess. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
You were a huge influence on me growing up. As a young kid in New York City, your movies have really been sort of like the theater to my life, and sort of like feeling comfortable in who I was when there really was not a lot of representation in the early 90s. So I want to talk about, I guess, just to jump off, since, in the intro I was mentioning Bound and Showgirls, how does it land on you when I refer to you as a gay icon?
I guess I've heard that term quite a bit. You have to understand it's like when I did Showgirls, but more importantly, Bound, when I took that role, my representatives basically said I would ruin my career if I took this part because it was a lesbian. And I thought, that was just not a good enough reason not to do it. I thought that was wrong. And also, I just loved the project so much. But I hated the idea that I would ruin my career by playing a lesbian. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. And, really, just as an actress, I approached the role because I loved it and I loved what it was about. But the repercussions of it and what happened afterwards, I felt really proud of the work that we all did. And I was really happy that it really helped so many young women who were trying to come out. And they said it gave them courage and just to see themselves being represented, in a different sort of light. So icon, I think I was just one of the first people to say, fine, I'll do this. I don't care that I think this is a stupid rule. And of course, now it's like, at a certain point, you win awards for playing a gay person. And now no one even blinks twice. There's so many other things going on. So, at some point that I think it's only icon by not default, but just because I was one of the first people to represent, kind of a cool gay chick in film.
Yeah. When they first cast the L Word, before they filmed the pilot, I know that the director, Rose Trochet, who you may or may not know, but she made a tape of all these like gay sex scenes to show the actresses who like may not have ever had any experience doing anything like that. And I know for a fact that your scene with Jennifer Tilly was on there. Is it funny to you that these actresses studied it in a way?
Well, I think it should be more of the filmmakers studying it because, the Wachowskis really shot the hell out of that scene. It was such a wonderfully conceived and felt, scene. And I think a lot of the times, forget gay sex scenes, just sex scenes in general are never really shot right. They're not sexy enough. They're not intense enough. They focus on the wrong moments. But the Wachowskis are such talented directors, and kind of the four of us, all of us were just making this thing work. And I mean, the sad thing to me about that was, it was a one shot take. And one of the scenes that the one that we all agreed on that we loved the most, that really showed those two characters madly in love with each other. And ironically enough, you didn't see anything. You didn't see any breasts. You didn't see any body parts that weren't acceptable, to American audiences. And it was so passionate. But then the ratings board said we couldn't use it.
Why?
Because God forbid, you show two women really making love instead of just having sex. So we had to end up going with a little bit more of a hardcore scene that was still effective, but to me it wasn't as loving and connected.
So wait, so what's the deal? If they used the original scene that they wanted, it would have gotten like an NC-17?
Yeah. they would have gotten an NC-17, and in this, and it had nothing to do with nudity, because the one that they used, you saw a little bit more of pieces of body parts, but it was more of the content. How it's just like, oh, God forbid you see two women like intensely making love to each other. It was too much for them, and that was kind of an eye opener.
And I know the Wachowskis had said to both you and Jennifer Tilly, like, you guys like wouldn't believe how many actresses refused to come in and even read for this.
Yeah, well, because their agents probably wouldn't let them. Their agents, I mean, my agents straight up said, "You will ruin your career if you do this movie." And they said, "We cannot even represent you." I ended up leaving my agents over it. I said, "Well, I'm doing it, so I guess I'll go somewhere else."
Oh, wow. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I just thought it was wrong. I thought the whole idea was wrong, and I thought that needed to change. And I've always been someone to kind of do, as an artist and as a human being, I feel like it's important to stand up for what you believe in, especially if what you're going against is just so antiquated and so wrong. And I just hated that whole, I certainly had so many gay friends, and I thought, this is terrible that this is, such a big deal. And besides that, at the time, there were like, you know, gay men, were being portrayed. So what was the problem with showing gay women portrayed? There seemed to be a special, onus on that. So
When you were like preparing for the role, or at least, yeah, I guess just preparing for the role to film that movie, did you look to any films that came before? I mean, maybe Gia was after, but like, what did you look to for just like points of reference or inspiration for Bound?
for inspiration, I watched a lot of Marlon Brando films and Montgomery Clift films and Robert Mitchum, just because I just thought Corky was much more butch than I was and much more masculine than I was. I tend to be so girly and I was also coming off a Showgirl, so I was in a totally different headspace, and my body I had to kind of change and kind of ground again instead of being too dancery. I didn't really prepare saying, "Oh, I'm playing a lesbian woman." I was playing a woman who had just gotten out of prison and was learning how to trust someone again. Like, I never even thought of her as a lesbian. I just thought of her as someone who really dug chicks.
I mean, it's the sexuality is like totally irrelevant, actually. Plot of the movie is basically the two of you are trying to steal $2 million worth of mafia money. It's like a film. It's a film noir.
It's a film noir. In fact, Warner Brothers, I think at some point said, "We'll make this movie and we'll give you more money if you just make it a man and a woman." Because you could have easily, cast Corky with a guy and make it a traditional film noir, that script. But the Wachowskis were like, "No, this is what this is about," because it had deeper meanings as well. I mean, being in the closet, the first shot you see of me, I mean, literally bound up in the closet. And it is a film, it's about stealing this money, from the mob. But to me, it was really a movie more between the two women about like trust, and who do you trust and who do you love, and can you trust them?
I love the story you told about, because you've done recurring appearances on Riverdale, and
Mhm.
now kind of how you were saying earlier, like, oh, obviously playing, they're gay characters and everything. It's like it's nothing at this point, but you were telling a story how one of the girls on Riverdale, I guess her character is gay. There's like a young gay couple on there, and you're like, oh, let's get like the veteran, gay chick with like the new one, and like it'd be fun for social media. And this young actress had never seen Bound. Were you
Yeah.
just like, do you know who the fuck I am? Like, I ran, so
It made me
you
feel,
know.
it made me feel really old all of a sudden. I said, "Girls, like, it's like you should see this movie," because they were so into it. But I realized, it's a different culture, and so they have different references. It just, yeah, it was like they had no idea how lucky they were that they could just kind of, with no repercussions at all, just play these parts. In fact, oh, it's such a groovy thing to do now. So, you know.
You were saying how you had to make a lot of changes, just coming off of Showgirls. You first mentioned your body. So yes, obviously you were a dancer in Showgirls. How did you transform your body for Bound?
I started boxing. Boxing was what I went to, just because I wanted to be a little bit more like Sugar Ray Robinson, if you know your boxers. It's just very zen and very non-reactive, but very focused. And I don't know, that seemed to help me a lot. And watching certain performances, people who are just really still. I had never been so still in a part in my life. So that was kind of a challenge. So I had to, ground in any way. And also just physically, I just wanted to get, bigger muscles instead of being so lithe and dancery and girly. I had to just kind of change my physicality. I only had like 3 weeks, so I just did it quickly.
Oh, you
'Cause
only had 3 weeks?
yeah, since when I think it was 3 or 6 weeks, but it was a quick turnaround.
Gina, I know you don't love talking about Showgirls, but this isn't going to hurt. Just a few quick things about Showgirls. Have you heard of the documentary called You Don't Know Me?
Was that the Showgirls one?
You do know it.
Yeah, yeah, I heard about it because I haven't seen it. I heard about it because I knew they kept wanting to interview me for it, and I just didn't do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, it's an interesting documentary that tries to answer the question, what is it about this film that has hooked people into rewatching it over and over and over again? And it also dives into what makes something camp, which I find to be a very worthy question. I think that's a fascinating topic. And it also goes into, how it's affected, how it's inspired other work, like their created Showgirls, the musical. Like other people have really been able to dive into other artistic endeavors inspired by this movie.
Right.
And in fact, in San Francisco, there are entire Showgirls drag extravaganzas. Some of these queens have literally dedicated their entire careers to playing you.
Well, that was always my secret mission. When I saw what was going on, I thought, well, you know what? I mean, I don't think she was supposed to be so camp, even though it was written very much like that. I thought it was going to be a very different movie. And then when I saw what I was dealing with, I thought, screw it. I'm going camp. I mean, real, but like, I think what makes camp, you're very aware of what's going on and you're in on the joke. I think that is a part of it. And so I just kind of played into it and I just kept thinking, ooh, the drag queens are going to be dressing up like me on Halloween. That was like my secret wish. You always have a secret little plan. And so I was really happy when that, they've had a field day with Cristal Connors as they should. Listen, it's great. It's very flattering. And yeah, listen, I have my own stories. I've been told by many people I should write a book because I have the quintessential showgirl stories that no one knows about. That I did start writing about it, and maybe it'll come out one day. But that's why I don't really talk about it so much because I ain't giving my shit away. I'm just joking, but I'm not really. I could, I remember saying I could write a musical about this, and I'd asked Joe Esterhaus. That's where the Showgirls the musical first came up. And then he was like, I'm doing it with you. And I thought, no, 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 no. But I think Jake Shears from the Scissor Sisters, he took me to one of those shows off Broadway. And he didn't tell me what we were going to see. And we laughed our heads off. It was so funny. It was UCB. They were doing a piece of, Joe Esterhaus talking to showgirls. And it was really funny. I think they were nervous that I was there. But I was like, oh, my God, this is hysterical.
That's amazing.
It's a trippy show. And it was trippy doing it. And I do have a lot of stories about it. But
I've heard a lot of stories. I know that one of the actors in the movie, the guy who's yelling, thrust it, the guy with the red hair. According to him, he did like a bunch of normal, quote unquote, normal, non over the top takes. And Verhoeven was just like, it has to be like bigger. He wanted it like bigger and bigger and bigger. And until the actor did a take that he thought was completely ridiculous. And then Verhoeven was like, that's what I want. Were you just able to understand more quickly?
oh no, no. Paul and I fought tooth and nails through every single scene I did. I had a very specific way of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And I think at the end he appreciated me as an actress, but yeah, we didn't really get along on that set so much.
Like, what were the fights about?
Honey, I ain't going into those. Those are really like, you'll read them in the book. But it was just, I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And I did see it. It was very different when I read it as to how, you have to take in what's going on around you. And, you could be in a totally different movie, but then you're in a totally different movie. And I think, if you look at Paul's films, part of his genius really is he does take things to the extreme. You could see that in Total Recall. You could see that in Starship Troopers. I mean, his Dutch films are just as intense, but in a more naturalistic way, I think. But he's always right in your face sort of director, which I think is what has made him so successful. And I think people obviously enjoyed the movie. I have my own feelings on it, but it's very in your face. And so that was probably a lot of his direction.
What is your biggest takeaway from that experience? All these years later, just seeing the totality of what it was like to make it to now, we're still talking about it over 20 years later. Like, what do you make of it?
I make a lot of it. I think it's like it goes with the bound thing. I think you have to listen to, as an artist, you have to listen to your gut and do a performance that I was pretty clear with what I wanted to do. And like I said, we fought tooth and nails along the way, although at the end he was really happy with what I had done. I also think, that's a film that when it came out, everyone's like, oh, this is the worst movie. And everyone kind of jumped on the mob bandwagon about Showgirls is terrible, except for exceptions like someone like Quentin Tarantino, who came out with this very rebellious article saying, I love Showgirls, and this is why. Like, people had to defend why they liked it. And to this day, people still can't stop talking about it. And I think there's a lot of things in the world that people are like, oh, this is terrible because it's like the mob mentality. Like, this is what we're supposed to not like. I secretly really like it. So, I learned not to listen to that, just to listen to myself as an artist and as a human being, and to do what I believe in and what's important to me and what I find, makes sense. You can't, if you start listening to other people's opinions, and all the critics were like going crazy on it. I learned how to not really care about reviews then. Although I have to say, the critics were pretty nice to me. I got pretty good reviews. But, if you believe the good ones, you have to believe the bad ones. Everyone has their opinion. I just feel like I just go to work and I try to do the best job I can and create whatever it is in front of me that, kind of turns me on and as an artist, and do the best job I can. And some people will like it. Some people won't. Everyone's going to have an opinion. Great. None of my business at a certain point.
What have you learned about critics?
There's some really good ones and there's a lot of really bad ones, and everyone's got an opinion. If you believe the good ones, you have to believe the bad ones. So I really don't get that affected either way. I mean, every now and then when I read something that I find very insightful and, and they really get what I was trying to do, and then they see something that I wasn't doing at all, but I find it interesting. But you can't invest too much into it, else you'll drive yourself crazy. Listen, no one's a harsher critic than I am. You know what I mean? No one's going to ever be like, oh, she did this. It's like, huh? Yeah, I know. Believe me, I know. I'm very aware of that. So, I'm pretty tough on myself.
So going back a little bit, well, going back quite a bit, I know that like you're from LA and then you wound up going to college on the East Coast. Like where were most of your formative years?
I would say I went to Boston first, to Emerson College, but I didn't really want to stay there. So I really wanted to go to NYU. So I ended up going to NYU for the last 3 years of college. And I definitely say that's where my formative years, as far as like becoming independent and starting a theater company. And, that's what's so great about if you're lucky enough to go to college, it's a time that you're away from everything, and you have to kind of make your own like big girl decisions and learn how to live your life as an adult. And especially in New York, because we didn't have dorms there. I guess there were dorms, but I didn't stay in the dorm. So I got into the whole, you got to find an apartment and a roommate, which was kind of insane in itself.
Where was your apartment?
Oh, where wasn't my apartment? I moved around a lot. Oh my God. Too many places. Downtown, mainly downtown, on the east side, lower east side, in the Village. I had one place for a second on 57th and 1st, which I did not stay for too long because it was too far away, and happened to be haunted by ghosts. So that was weird. But mainly downtown. But it's tough to find apartments. So it was like a couple months here, a couple months there.
So, like, around what year is this when you were in college?
The 80s. It was in the 80s.
Where were you going out at night? Like, what were you doing at night?
I was studying. I was taking a lot of courses and I was doing a lot of acting stuff. So, it was no joke. I mean, I was going to school from, you know, 9 in the morning until probably sometimes 5 or 6, and then I was doing plays. So I would rehearse, or that I'd have homework and I have to write papers because I was kind of a double major as well. So you didn't really go out. I was very focused in on work. I guess on the weekends, maybe I'd hang out with friends. I can't remember. I felt like I was just always rehearsing a play or rehearsing scenes or studying or writing a paper. It was kind of an intense learning period.
Is that when you founded the Naked Angels?
Naked Angels came after we graduated. I came back to LA because I already had an agent out here that I'd gotten when I was in high school who'd seen me in a show. And I came out here and I found myself having a very difficult time for various reasons. Mostly because then it was like I was too ethnic for a lot of parts, you know? I mean, now I'm not ethnic enough. It's like everything switches around so much, but I was very dark in comparative, they wanted the blonde and the blue eyed, or I was too ethnic looking, so I was getting parts playing a Farsi, an Afghani girl or a Middle Eastern girl or Italian, a lot of Italians. And then I went back to New York and I ended up auditioning for a play there at the Long Wharf Theater where I'd always wanted to work, Camille. I did Camille with Kathleen Turner. And while I was there, a bunch of friends of mine who went to NYU and just other friends we knew, really talented people, everyone from, oh my God, like writer-wise, Kenny Lonergan and John Robin Bates and Frank Puglisi, and Fisher Stevens was in it, Matthew Broderick was in it. It was just a very talented group of people, but none of us were getting hired, especially as actors. Rob Morrow, me, Marissa Tomei. I mean, there's a bunch. And so we decided, well, let's just start our own company. Although I was really the only girl, me and Nicole Burdett. And so we just started a company just so we could work because we weren't getting hired.
And so what's the deal? You would recruit writers into the company to just come up with material, and then you would...
No, writers, I'd say more writers were in the company than anyone else. So we just would use their writing. This is when all these guys are starting to get their own, before they had big, huge careers. Joe Montello was part of it. I mean, we had a great group of people. Warren Light. I mean, you can go down the list. A lot of people who were working. And so I was just very lucky. We had incredible writers, and we would just put on a show. We would build the sets and put on a show. So I just said, forget it. I'm coming back here and staying in New York where I could actually work. I mean, not make any money, but at least we were working on what we were doing.
And then how many years did you come back to New York for?
I basically stayed in New York. I mean, at some point I came back to LA, but I was very bi-coastal. I stayed mainly in New York. I came out to LA a few times when I was working and when I was living, with my boyfriend or something. When I had a relationship here, I would stay here. But I always had a foot in New York. Then I had two places, and probably about 10 years ago, I gave up my LA place because I just was never here. I was in New York and I was in Europe. I was seeing someone in Europe, so I was just never here. I thought, why am I paying money for a place out here?
Right. So when you were pretty much living in New York and had, that's where you're doing most of your work, how would you compare how you saw or how you observed New York City and theater and nightlife in the 80s and 90s to today?
I always was, I was never like a club girl so much. I know that's hard to believe, but I just loved it because I was doing music. So there was always a place to play or to sing, or I could do a play, or you could go out. The great thing about New York, and I pray, I can't wait till the day it comes back, and any given night you can go see a screening of a movie, you can go see a play, you can go see a performance somewhere. So there was just so much activity going on. And, pre-pandemic, it was still the same. Maybe it's gotten a lot more expensive and it's not as ma and pa in certain places. But I don't know, maybe that's going to turn around and go back for the artists to be living in New York. I mean, in the last few years, a lot of my friends moved to Brooklyn. A lot of artists moved over there just because it was hard to afford staying in the city. I was lucky because I always had a place there. So, it just New York. There's this. I just left New York about a week ago, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's a ghost town." It's like it was fantastic
Yeah, it's not. It's not a ghost town at all.
at all. I really miss it. Being in LA right now, I came out here to see my mom and to do other things. I really miss being in New York right now. I think in a month, I think maybe I'll be happy I'm here, but I'll be going back sooner than later.
What were your favorite venues to perform in at that time?
Well, I mean, right before COVID, about a year, 2 years ago now, I performed at the Carlisle Hotel. I did a residency there, which was really amazing because I wanted to put together a proper jazz band. I kind of grew up, my uncle was a jazz musician and composer, and he had an orchestra. And that always kind of seeped into my being. And I knew so many great musicians, great jazz musicians. So I thought it was a great opportunity to get away from the rock and roll or the country blues thing and really do put together like an incredible band and do real old jazz stuff with modern, flavors in it. So that, I have to say, that was a really trippy place to play. I really loved it.
And
But
that one woman show was all about the different women that you've known.
yeah, I called it Wild Women Don't Get the Blues based on an Ida Cox song. But no, it was about the women who influenced me growing up. I always I did another show before In Search of Cleo, How I Found My Pussy and Lost My Mind,
Yeah.
which was, I ended up writing a book. But I had all this material and I had all these songs that, were really about what people do in order to get love, what people will go through. And I found, oh, I had this whole crazy story about my cat. I like doing songs, but I like kind of hanging it on a storyline, like a through line, because I like to tell stories and do the funny. I have so many crazy stories in my life, but then put the songs in, to really create kind of a one woman show and make cohesive sense out of it. So, I did that down at the Box on an off night, which was a crazy place. But I like playing pianos. I like playing, there's all sorts of weird little clubs. I can't remember all the clubs I played there, but I miss doing live music. I was putting together another show.
I want to talk to you because we're on the subject. You did this movie in the early 2000s called Pray for Rock and Roll. So absolutely loved this movie when it came out. I'm a huge fan of Linda Perry, and I know you worked with her on the soundtrack, and you went on tour to promote the movie.
Yeah.
And I saw you a couple times, but I distinctly remember seeing you at Joe's Pub, and you get up on stage and you're like, yeah, I found this guy. I didn't know who he was, but he had this guitar, and you wind up pulling out Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
Yeah, sure.
And so, what's the deal? So you've been friends with Lenny Kravitz, or you've known him since high school?
Yeah. When I went to Beverly, I didn't know anyone there. So I was kind of like the newbie girl from the valley going, well, all right. And I remember being in the cafeteria one day, and there was some like cute guy with a guitar singing and playing, with his just like in the corner. And I went over to him. I was the only one there, and I thought this guy's fantastic. And so we became friends. And we would go into the little theater together, and I would sing and he would play, and then we were in pit chorus together because we weren't old enough to be on the main stage, and we'd be like, one day we're going to be on the main stage. And so yeah, I've known Lenny since I was 15. And so when I was doing the tour, he was going to be there. Musicians are so great because they always want to just come up and play. I was like, I'm doing this thing. You want to come up? Because like, yeah, of course. So of course I was going to bring Lenny up. I love him.
There's so many avenues here. So, like I said, like you went on tour because basically you played the lead singer of this punk rock band who was sort of facing, she was like maybe like on the verge of turning 40, and the thesis of the movie is like you kind of looking at yourself in the mirror like, how long can I do this, like pursue this rock and roll like lifestyle, like I'm maturing, like I'm older, and that's sort of like the come to Jesus moment that your character has.
Well, also she never made it. It's not about, I mean, she was turning 40, but it was based on a real woman, Sherry Love Dog, who was a punk rocker, and she never really made it. And at some point, how do you live? Do you give up what you love in order to get a normal job? How do you pay your rent? I mean, she was a tattoo artist as well, so that was great. And so this was a story about her. And I thought, first of all, I hadn't been playing music at all. I was doing cabaret on Broadway, and Alex Steyermarker, the director, said to me, he's like, listen, I really want you for this movie. Can you play guitar? I said, well, yeah, I grew up playing guitar and singing. And if I really listened to the gods and the universe, I probably would have just done music the whole time, although I really had my heart set on acting. But I started, so I was learning her songs and I was doing her show. And I liked the idea of, because you don't have to be a rock and roller or a musician. It could be a writer or an actress or a painter. I mean, anyone who has a dream and they haven't quote unquote hit it. What do you do when you're really passionate about something? Do you keep going? It's a real thing, you know? And so I just loved the idea of it. And then once I started playing, I had fun. I started, playing again. And I sang the whole movie live. And then when it came time to promote it, we were going to go to Sundance, and the producers, I ended up becoming a producer on it just because it, everything fell apart, and I really was already invested in it. And they were like, can you play at Sundance? I said, with what? I have like a little acoustic guitar, some punk rock songs? That's weird. And so they said, no, just get a band together. And so as in music, it always just comes so easily in a strange way, like maybe because I know a lot of musicians, and they're just so generous with their time and they just want to play. Within a few hours, I basically had Guns N' Roses as my band because I bumped into Matt Sorum. He said, I'll play. I said, how do I put together a band for this thing? They were in between bands. And so I had, Slash and Duff and Matt. And so we played.
It's crazy.
It was insane. It was so amazing. I never really had a real band before. I was like, oh my God. So that was quite some experience. And then from that, I guess the House of Blues was there and they offered me a tour. And then I decided to do a documentary called Rocked about, an actress going on tour promoting an independent film, simply because we needed more money because, House of Blues gave us $2 and then, no, it was actually the opposite. The production company gave us $2. And so House of Blues said they would sponsor a tour. And so together we put it together and I ended up producing and co-directing a documentary called Rocked, a 6-part documentary for IFC.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember watching that as it was airing. It was so cool.
It was so fun. And so I went on tour, to promote the film and then ended up really working on the documentary just because the distributors really never distributed the film. And I really love that movie.
It's so good.
It's so hard. It barely came out. It was hard to find. I thought, oh my God, so many people work so hard on this. And it's really one of my favorite ones I've done. So,
good.
Yeah. Then from that, and Sherry said to me at some point, she said, these songs don't really play live. I think and I said, great. So that's when I had become friends with Linda Perry from doing shows with Camp Freddy. And I just said, you need to write songs with me. And she was like, oh. And then we became friends and we started working on stuff. And then I was pulling in Matt, I was pulling in Slash, I was pulling in all these different people to write with. So I had songs to go on tour. And then when the soundtrack was coming out, we realized there wasn't an amazing song that could be a single. And so Linda actually had known Sherry Love Dog before. And I said, Linda, we need to write a cover track for this. And so Linda's just been, she became a great friend and she was so generous and she's so crazy talented. So we wrote Stupid Star and we had a lot of fun doing it.
What are you into personally? Or who did you grow up loving, music wise? And also just now, what do you gravitate toward?
Oh God, I'm all over the map. I mean, lately I've been really listening a lot to, I love Billie Eilish. I'm really into her. I love, I still always love, Tom Waits and Elvis Costello will always be my favorites. I've been, it depends what I'm working on. You know what I mean? When I was working on the Carlisle, I got into all these old school, ladies. And I mean, lately I've been listening to way too much news and way too many podcasts. So
let's jump into Curb Your Enthusiasm. How did this land in your lap?
Oh my God, that was a really funny story. I was doing a show for Dennis Leary. They were roasting him and he asked me to do a song. I didn't know. I'd never been to a roast and I was only a woman at that roast. And next thing I know, everyone was roasting me, right? And I'm like, wait, I did my song and my dance number. I was really nervous. And, I had dancing girls and this and that. And as soon as I was the first one up and I did my nice speech about Dennis and I did my little song and dance. And then as soon as I got off stage, they're like, you have to do it again because the hat was making a shadow and they were filming it. I said, are you kidding me? I'm already like drinking a tequila. And I was like, oh my God. I said, great, let's just do it right now. They said, no, you have to wait until the very end of the show because it's live. So I thought, great, everyone's going to want to leave. And yeah. Anyway, I sat and I watched the show and I kept drinking tequila because I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe how much I was getting attacked. And my friend's like, it's a roast. I said, wow.
What were they saying about you?
I can't remember, but it was just like snarky roast stuff. I was there with a bunch of comedians,
Yeah.
so they go for it. And by the time I went to, and Jeff Garland was the host, he was the MC. And by the time I went back to do my bit, I was like, listen, I'm doing a different intro and I'm doing a different monologue. I just ripped them all on, I just went, you want to play? Great. And I just started doing my own version of stand-up, which wasn't even stand-up. It was just like saying whatever I felt that, kind of got back at all these guys that I was kind of annoyed at that point. And then I sang my song, which was much angrier than it was before. And when I got off stage, Jeff Garland was laughing. He's like, oh my God, I think that's the funniest thing I have ever seen. You have to do our show. I'm like, ah, rah, 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 rah. I'd never even really heard of Curb. I hadn't been watching it. And I remember he said, no, we're calling you on Monday. You're doing this. I said, yeah, whatever. And I was really busy. I was doing a movie. I was doing a TV show. I was, a lot of stuff was going on. And when they called, I remember Rick Rubin. I was with Rick Rubin and we were hanging out. If you know Rick.
Yeah, the music producer.
Yeah. And I said, oh, they just called me. And he said, Gina, if you do anything all year, that's the thing you do. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, okay, sure. So I went in and they just kind of joked. They said, oh, if you ever play the, Hassidic dry cleaner, the Hassidic lady at the dry cleaner again, will, be too soon. Can you do that? And everyone was like, no, you play yourself. Don't worry. Just go and improvise. And when I got on set, they're like, no, we really did want you to play the Hassidic dry cleaner from somewhere, in Eastern Europe. We have no idea where she's from. And so they said, can you just make something up? And on the spot, I just made it up. And then Larry started laughing and off we went. So it really just kind of came out of that. I had no clue what I was getting into, but it was the most fun. It was literally one of my favorite things I've ever done.
I'm a huge Curb purist and fan of it, since the beginning. And that is one of the funniest side characters in the show's history. And this show has been on like over a decade.
Thank you. I kept saying to Larry, I'm like, Larry, let's just do a write-off of Hannah, the horny Hasid. I said, everyone loves her. I mean, he had me come back 3 times. He goes, I keep bringing you back. I never even do that as an extra character. It was really, really fun. I mean, there's such a great group of people to work with, and when you get to improvise with really great people, I mean, nothing's more fun.
So what do they give, like, what is the direction? So, okay, you arrive on the set. What was the direction that you were given for the character?
No direction. I mean, they just said, this is who you are, and they don't have a script. They said, in this scene, you come in and you flirt with Larry. Go. I said, easy as play.
You came up with the accent.
Oh, yeah. I just came up with the accent, and Larry started laughing. He said, do that. As soon as I said Larry, he said, yes. And his problem is, like, he just laughed. It was great because you make him laugh, but then we'd have to do the take again. So we just had fun. I mean, honestly, and if, you do something they like, they said, yeah, keep that bit on. Let's do it again. Maybe mention a cat or maybe mention this. They just kind of throw stuff at you. But there's really no script that's written out, just like kind of 10 lines of what the scenes are.
And when you did the Funny or Die sketches, the impersonations of Sarah Palin and Melania Trump, you've actually done Melania Trump in a bunch of different venues. Yeah. Who wrote those bits?
The first Sarah Palin, I mean, Adam McKay called me. This is before Tina Fey started doing it on SNL. He's like, Gershon, we got to do this. Let's you can play her. Let's do this before everyone starts doing it. And so they wrote the Sarah Palin pieces, which I think I did 3 or 5, or gosh, I can't remember. And then, you certainly improvise a lot once you're in there. And then with a Melania, I called him up saying, listen, I want to do Melania before I could really do her. Let's do her before anyone else starts doing her, and I have to say, the first one I remember saying something about the Super Bowl Tuesday and having a Nazi salute, and they kind of cut my hand off. I remember they say it's too intense, and I made some joke about the Portese sheets and the KKK. I was coming up with a lot of bits. They're like, oh, it's too much. I said, guys, do you understand what's going on here? And so I did that, and then little by little, I started doing a little bit of my own and writing my own. And when I did Jimmy Fallon, I had a Melania Speaks. I did an Instagram for a second, so I started throwing stuff on there. Not enough, probably, but and then I did a musical. They asked me to do it. At a certain point, it was fun, and then all of a sudden, little by little, it just wasn't funny anymore to me. And then I think as everyone started going into a panic of like, oh my God, what is going on? I got incredibly tense doing her. I kept thinking I should do it, but I started getting too sad about it, And then, of course, I'd go off and do a movie or I'd do something else. And then lately, in the last few months, I've done another thing. I'm not sure if it's coming out, and I can't really talk about it until it does. So that's kind of a surprise thing.
One final question. How do you feel about the fact that when you were coming up in the 90s, there was no social media at that time? You didn't have the pressure of having to be a product in some way on Instagram and all that comes with it.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Like just the role of social media in either in television or film, everything turns into a meme or it turns into a GIF or whatever.
I mean, listen, it's completely changed, and it's a much longer conversation, and it's a much more nuanced conversation. I think for everything that's good, there's something bad. I liked it, and I kind of was raised, I looked up to all those, the actors and actresses. I mean, in the studio system, I don't think I would have loved that system. I don't think I would have liked to have been so controlled and told what to do, although a few people did exactly what they wanted. I liked having the mystery of, my life doesn't matter to you. Just look at my work, because I think it helps the work, when you don't know so much. And in the last, few years, because of social media and reality shows, celebrity is a whole different thing. So there's celebrities who could probably get jobs, over me because they have more followers, they're influencers or this or that. So it's reality TV and social media has really shifted, the arts and the world, I guess, in general. In a way, I think it's really hard because you have to work so hard at like being liked and how many likes do you have? And instead of just saying, I'm going to study a scene and do a play and get really good at what I do. But on the other hand, sometimes, it used to be when I was starting out, like you had to do a play and maybe get discovered and then you get an agent, but you have to learn your craft. Now, I feel like people become stars even if they do or they don't know what they're doing. And, some of them are really fantastic. But I feel like instead of saying, oh my God, I have to do a showcase, I have to get people to see me, you could produce your own stuff and put it out there. And we've seen it a lot with musicians more. You don't have to wait for someone to discover you. You don't have to wait to put your work out there. So I think on that level, it's really exciting. It's like if I were starting out as an actor now, I'd just be like, get people together, like, let's just create stuff and put it out there. And then you get seen. So you're not as dependent on people, in the same way. It's like doing little black box theater plays. Like I said, with everything, it's good and it's bad. It's its own thing. It's turned into its own monster. It wastes way too much of my time, to be honest. And I'm not as good on it. Like, it's like, yeah, I do my Instagram when I have to sell my book or like it was important for voting, But sometimes I'm thinking, wait, why am I doing this? I happen to like taking pictures, so that's cool. But it's a whole business into itself. And I think a lot of these young performers, if they use it the right way, I think it's fantastic. But if you use it just as to get famous and then you have nothing to really back it up, I think that could be problematic.
Very well said. Gina, thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Jess. You take care of yourself.
Guys, if you haven't seen it, definitely go watch Bound and Pray for Rock and Roll. I know y'all have seen Showgirls 85 times. And go follow me, JessXNYC. Follow the show account, Hot Takes Deep Dives. And we'll see you soon.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Have a good day. Larry,
How are you, Anna?
Oh, I'm just never been better. So what could I do for you, my friend?
Well, got a little suit here. Needs a cleaning. My wife and I are renewing our vows. 10 years we've been married.
Oy. Well, I bet you make her very happy.
No, she's the most miserable woman in the world, believe me.
You're pretty fit, Larry. How you stay so fit? What you do?
I run away from hoodlums, you know. Keeps you in shape. So what do you think? You can get this done for me for, I need it by, oh no, I got that dinner party. Tomorrow?
You could have whatever you like, Larry.
So, do I need a ticket or anything?
I know you, Larry. You don't need no ticket.
Okay.
Larry, what are you doing here?
Well, actually, I kind of need a bit of a favor. I'm so sorry for disturbing you.
You would never disturb me even if you tried.
Ah, that's very sweet of you. Anyway,
How did you know where I live, Larry?
I had seen your van parked outside before.
You've been stalking me, haven't you, Larry?
No, not really. I just saw the van out there. Anyway, I'm so sorry to bother you on the Sabbath. I was kind of wondering if it would be possible if there was any way that you could go open the store so I can get my suit.
Well, you know it is the Sabbath. I cannot drive.
Well, we can walk over there. I can take your piggyback.
Oh, now you're talking, Larry. You know, Shlomo is at shul.
Oh.
You want to come in for a drink?
Actually, you know, I really don't have that much time. We're renewing our vows, and I kind of got to get going.
Your vows with your wife.
Yes.
10 years.
Yes, 10 years. Yeah.
I, too, have been married for 10 years. 10 long years. Go get the keys. Well, it's about fucking time, Larry. My God, I've been waiting all day. Come on in. What is that?
My suit. I got it stained at the ceremony. Figured as long as I'm here, I'd drop it off with you.
Drop it off with me.
Yeah.
Here.
Well, yeah, I figured you'd save me a trip, you know.
Why don't you just take it to the cleaners, Larry?
Well, I'm here. You're a cleaner.
I'm not gonna schlep your dirty clothes all the way there. Why should I do that?
Well, what's the big deal? You put it in your trunk. You're going right over there.
You throw it in your trunk, Larry. You take it in your fucking car and you go over to the cleaners. It's not a big deal. It's you do it all the time.
I figured I killed two birds with one stone.
I am not going to schlep your dirty fucking clothes over to the cleaners, Larry. My God.
How do you do with wine stains?
We get them out.
What about blood?
Of course we get blood. We get everything. We're
Really?
we're the
You
best
get wine and
cleaners
blood.
around, Larry.
Wine and blood.
Wine and blood.
All right, you got your work cut out for me with this one.
What is wrong with you?
All right, don't get so riled up about
Not
it. It's just a
riled up.
favor. You go in the
come
store
here to
anyway.
Fuck, or do you come here to talk about your dirty suit? Fuck or suit?
Okay, the first one.
Well, there you go. Let's go. I don't got all day.
So you're not gonna take the suit?
Jesus Christ.
So, yeah, just get the blankets clean.
Is it?
That's all. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. What are you doing? What are you doing?
You want me to clean the blanket?
Yeah. So just throw it in. Just throw it in the bin. You don't need to.
I don't have a bin, Larry. I have to look at it to see what kind of cleaning I'm going to do.
You don't need to inspect it. It's not
What is
necessary.
wrong with you, Larry? Do you want me to clean the blanket or not?
What are you doing? Just throw it in.
Oh. Wow.
Okay, I had nothing to do with that.
Sure, Larry. Whatever you say.
No, somebody's staying at my house, and I'm sure he did that.
Larry, I could give a shit if it was Santa Claus. I'm just trying to get it out.
I'm just telling you, okay, that I had nothing to do with that. That's not my thing.
Okay.
All right, fine.
Okay. You look very cute when you're all blushy. You think I didn't tell? I'm your friend, Larry.
I didn't do it. I'm not going to lie about that. You're really insane, you know?
Larry, in all the many years I've worked here at the dry cleaners, no one ever returns anything. Sometimes you get home and you have something that isn't yours, and sometimes something of yours gets taken. That's just the unwritten law of dry cleaning. Everyone knows that.
Really?
Really?
Well, I don't subscribe to that law.
Oh, well, then maybe you should change it.
Maybe I will.
Good. I'll have your semen-covered blanket ready on Wednesday.